Hey gang, Groom Racer here. In this video we're going to talk a little bit about servos and their specifications. In particular their callouts that are both speed and power and what that means. And then we're also going to correlate that to some of the servo horns that they offer, some included, some not, but to give you an idea of how that correlation plays together. So the specification of the servo, the speed, the power, and how the servo horn correlates with that. So let's get started on this. So let's go ahead and talk about the Futaba S3004, and that's their standard servo. It offers 0.23 seconds, 60 degrees at 4.8 volts, 44 ounces of force inch at 4.8 volts. That servo is actually capable of a little bit more voltage than that, 6 volts. But I found it's just not a great idea to go over that. I have experienced a servo failure due to overvolting, and I don't want to do that again. So it's best to follow the manufacturer's recommendations for voltage when it applies to servos. I'm just using the 4.8 volts as a simple metric just to keep this a little bit simpler. So the next part of the video is, let's go ahead and look at the servo horns Futaba offers. Now, 4 of these 5 that I've got listed here typically come with the servo. One of them comes with some of the larger, high-powered servos. Anyway, let's take a look at those. We've got the 6W, and that's the small round one. You know, it comes with most of the servos you purchase. 6S, 6R, 6X, and 6G. You can see the 6G, that's their largest, or a very large wheel. Anyway, and then what I did with that is I measured from the center of the spline out to the hole closest to the spine, that's 285, and the hole furthest away from the spline, 315. That's thousandths of an inch. So that gives us a metric to go by. We'll go ahead and talk about the rest of them here. 6S, 285, 550, 6R, 275, 575, 6X, 305, 625, 6G, 275, 780. So that 780 is just over 3/4 of an inch, right? Now remember, Futaba, all the servo manufacturers that I know anyway, and Futaba in particular, uses inches or ounces of force inch to qualify their servos. This one happens to be 44 ounces inch. 44 ounces force inch at 4.8 volts. So what we're going to do is we're going to take that 44 ounces of force inch, and we're going to take that inch and we're going to turn it into these thousandths. So let's take 44 and divide it by distance. Let's go ahead and take this one, the 780. So 44 divided by 780 gives us 54 ounces force. Well, you can see we've picked up some power in that servo, or capable power in that servo, by having a shorter servo arm. Now what happens when we go to that little tiny wheel and the hole furthest in, that would be our shortest distance. Remember this one, the 6W, 285 thousandths, 44 divided by 285 thousandths gives us 154 ounces of force. That's a lot. But remember, because we've shortened that to 285 thousandths, there isn't a lot of throw there. It's not going to move very far. It's going to have a lot of power doing it. It's just not going to move very far. That's kind of always been the balance, right? And the reason for the exercise is to let you know that the qualification on the servo, 44 ounces force inch, is a standard metric. In other words, Futaba says their servo arm qualification goes from the center of the spline to exactly 1 inch out, and that is an inch. And then the speed is relative to the time it takes the servo arm to travel from one side of the lock a full 60 degrees to the other side of the lock. Well, this particular exercise doesn't deal necessarily with speed. That just happens to be one of them. We could go that route, but the speed really doesn't change throughout the rotation of this. So the idea here is that when you're setting up your boat, you know, a lot of times we just don't have room for long servo arms, putting stuff in a radio box. Tunnel boats, I run inch servo arm, but it'll give you an opportunity to actually calculate how much force you might actually need to operate that boat. I have raced Sport 40 on 45 ounce force servos before. But with a 3/4 inch arm, I'm over 50 ounces of force. So it is possible to use a little bit less servo as long as you're kind of optimizing that steering throw, maybe saving yourself a few bucks. On the same note, if you've got maybe a servo that you require more force, you think maybe it's just not enough. That happens in tunnel boats from time to time, and others too. You can actually get an idea based on the length of the arm on how much servo force you might need. So anyway, just something to ponder, stuff to think about. So to close this video, go ahead and take a few measurements off some of the boats you have set up now and get the specifications for the servo. I think you'll be enlightened to find out exactly how much power, or holding power if you will, these servos are really capable of providing based on these new calculations. You actually probably have more power in the boat than you thought. Anyway, this is Grim Racer. Until next time, we'll see you down at the pond.